Well, I think it's time for another one of my probably misnamed rants. I had a visit from the plumber today. And of course, things had to be pretty desperate for me to invite someone into my home to do work. I have to pay them money, I have to have them here, I have to interact with that person. Terrified as hell about the whole thing, knowing me. So I set the appointment, I think on Monday or Tuesday. And I've been very agonized about this invasion going to happen for the entirety of the week. This was the first day that was particularly convenient for him, and I was in no hurry to get anything done. And, the main reason was there was a kitchen sink that was leaking, and it ended up being worse than I thought. I thought it was just a couple of little pieces that needed to be replaced. It ended up pretty much the entirety of the plumbing underneath had to be replaced, and a new faucet. I had some suspicions along that line, but there was also a clogged drain at one point, and I started cleaning the tub, and then I plunged it, and that cleared the drain, and I said, well, I'm not going to have him look at this if that's the case. But the point there was that I was cleaning the tub, and that brings us to kind of at least what the initial focus, these things always flow and flow, of this is, which is that after cleaning the tub and the under sink area and everything else, I realized, wow, my whole apartment's a mess. Now, if you follow my videos, you know this already. You know I've got, hellish piles of boxes and crap in every corner, that I've got cups lining the top of my wall. Well, I ended up cleaning quite a bit of that. Not all of it. I mean, I've still got my cups and stuff. I'm not going to throw out what I know is useful. Hoarding can only be fought so much, but I cleaned these corners of boxes and bags and crap that have been here for years without me touching. And obviously, the first thought is, well, is that shame? And no, it's not. I mean, I wouldn't have videoed it if it was shame. I have absolutely no worry about people knowing what it is that I live in, the hell that I'm in. It was actually politeness. It was the idea that somebody coming into this would recoil from the disorder, that they would be so disturbed by it, I think. And it's odd because I was thinking about this last night too, and I thought about making the video, but I was too pooped, too stressed perhaps. Now it's all over, I can talk. I have a friend who I think is the exact opposite. Or had. I have no friends now. I have a wife, that kind of counts, but not really. At least no one I interact with. People online, but that's somehow different, If people aren't physically present, they don't exist for me in a sense. So, we'd be interested in playing a game at his place, or at seeing a game he had at his place, and we weren't too far away, and we'd drive there. Actually, not the only friend, several of them, who I think have expressed similar types of feelings, but one in particular stood out. I don't want to name names. Except that he scotch guards his entire apartment. So in the unlikely event that he's watching. But there was this oh no, I don't want you guys coming, the place is a mess. All right, he admits it's a mess. Maybe that's not shame. But when we would say, look, you know, I live in a sty or something like that, and we game at my place, the reaction was always still a refusal. I think that was truly shame to see how he lived. He didn't want to show his own weakness or whatever. Whereas when we did visit, he did not seem terribly to be all that concerned with everybody's, you know, comfort or anything. Hence Scotch guarding his entire apartment, which is just miserable to feel. But I'm sure that just didn't come into his awareness. But a number of different factors, which leads me to believe that his was driven by shame rather than sort of this politeness, not wanting to impose on anyone else. Now, it's funny because I am incredibly impositional on someone that I'm very close to. I mean, if I'm a total dick, you know that I kind of care about you. If I'm not a total, or you're online. But seriously, yeah, I mean, I probably enjoy trolls more than like my reaction with some other people, just because I can be a total dick and I feel this closeness with them due to that reacts to how I am with everyone else. That's how I am naturally. I'm dictatorial. I'm just, you know, a spoiled child. But when I'm just friends with someone, when they're my gaming buddies or whatever, I don't know. It felt like I had to go more out of my way. I'm still not as good as most people probably are. You know, I don't feel like I have to serve you drinks. And bring your own damn drink, you know? I don't feel too much of anything. But it's maybe I'm beginning to feel closer to the people by that point. But I did find that I regularly cleaned my apartment when I was in Buffalo for my gaming friends. On the other hand, there was an earlier period where I just didn't give a damn at all, and it was kind of up to the woman who would become my first wife. You want to clean? Go ahead. I don't give a shit. You know, I'm good with living in filth, and she wasn't, and you know, she would clean things. But once we moved to a finer apartment, and I put some effort into it, and it wasn't. I didn't feel like I was living. I felt like I was settled, and that's what I thought I would feel here. But I put some effort in a way that I never put effort in here. I just put money into this place. I bought it. So I don't know. Maybe that's the turning point instead. Anyway, the story of it all, the plumbing trip. Wow, ended up really cool guy. You know, we chatted. He offered to actually trade his plumbing services for me doing a little bit of web design for him, and well, I was a little leery of that because I haven't done any web design in a long time. The tools are a little different now in terms of how they all work together. So I wanted to make sure, you know, I'm not cheating him. So I paid him and we agreed if I can come up with something that works for him that he's going to use, he'll negate that. You know, he'll negate at least his labor of the bill, which is cool. And here we ramble into other things, which is why these are totally misnamed. They're not rants, they're monologues that wander, you know. But we chatted about this, that, and the other. Cigars, plumbing stuff, obviously. Computer stuff. He had done some web design actually earlier in his life. And just this, that, and the other. All kinds of little things. Life without a car. And I realized I probably could really get along with this guy in a way that I didn't feel like I could get along with, say, the gamers that I went and hung out with. And this guy's probably 15 years younger than me at least. But about the age that I was and that my friends were when I last actually had friends. I think everybody my age largely grows up. I don't feel, and they don't really seem grown up, right? I mean, they really don't. You know, they're like, oh, we'll give Nay a big facial with this artillery. And I'm just kind of like, oh my God, they sound like the fucking idiots that, like, I knew in high school who were fucking idiots then, and but they're playing minis. What's wrong here? You know, what the hell? How can you be a war gamer and, like, come off that way? But, you know, to tell you the truth, you know, the group that I went down to see, that I've gamed with on and off, never seriously. I've gone to a couple of sessions. They don't remind me of that. They're not crude, but there's no connection. It's as separated as me from these guys who I just feel like they look like they're acting like high school students. Well, I'm still acting like a high school student, but I'm acting like the high school student that I was. You know, I find weird little word plays amusing. I'm not sure if you catch many of them. I generally try not to play around with them because they're just so, I don't know. They're so juvenile in their own way that I just don't feel like they have a place, and you know. But for me to get along with someone, I feel like I'd have to blurt these things out every now and then, probably, while I'm chatting with them. My wife's fine with them. I'm not sure she gets most of them. I kind of miss having people around who did get them better. And didn't just, you know, one little kid or whatever. You know, just because two things sound alike, trying to pretend. It's sort of this, I didn't hear it correctly, I misheard it, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Not quite Beavis and Butthead. More if they were very, very educated. But, yeah, I mean, I felt like there was sort of an initial connection. I felt this with other people every now and then. I don't know if it would, you know, line up with anything, but we basically do not have any interests in common. We wouldn't have anything to do together. The discussion just felt natural in a way that discussions don't often feel natural with other people. Maybe it's just moods, you know, maybe it's just that first impression, that first meeting situation. But it's all very odd to me, and nothing I quite understand, and nothing I will quite understand. And I don't know where I'm going as usual. Except that there's something cathartic to speaking these out on the camera, just as there would be in person. But in a sense, in person, you're talking to one person, and there's this already something at risk with a single person. So if I'm talking to someone and I say, you know, I really like wearing my bunny slippers to the mall, they might look at me weird. But you can't look at me, well, I mean, you can, and you can say, what a fucking idiot this guy is. But I don't mind that because, you know, remember, I like internet trolls, so I'll just pretend that you're my kind of critter. Somehow there's no risk to doing this. And that may be some of the freedom for me. I would never have this freedom to speak in this way to someone I wasn't very, very comfortable with. But I have this freedom to speak to the whole fucking world. And I have the same freedom when I'm, you know, typing on a forum or on my Facebook. And I just don't really give a shit, you know? I'm not going to put my guard up. Why? Because there is no risk in my mind. The question, of course, is what is the risk in my mind if I'm talking to someone who's sort of not terribly well, you know, that I'm not already really close friends with. And I will never become close friends with them if I can't take that risk with them, if I don't feel comfortable in doing so. But I also am still unwilling to, I mean, there's like, well, come on, man, if you look at it as an analytical bet, it's like asking a girl out, right? You see a chick in the bar, and you're like, well, she's hot, I'd like to do her. Okay, well, what are you going to do about it? You're going to sit there and think, wow, I wish we could meet, Or are you going to go up to her? Well, of course, I will sit there and think, of course she will come to me in my glory. And maybe be right about 30% of the time. And then still manage to drive them away with non-committal and dismissive answers. I consider them something of a test in a way. I mean, come on. What kind of person hangs out at a bar, right? I mean, me, but in general, people who are at bars don't terribly impress me. But then again, that was the only way that I had of possibly meeting anyone. Other than, at one point classes I was teaching or at work or something like that. Yeah. And almost everyone failed that test. I would say there have been a few glimmers and one fantastic hope, which was terribly disappointing. But in terms of, my hubris doesn't allow me to say I had her read wrong. What it says is that I scared her away afterwards. But if I take her at her face value, I had her read wrong. She loves me, but it doesn't mean a damn thing or something like that. I have no idea. Anyway, such is. But yeah, it was. This is, in a sense, the most personal interaction I had with someone other than my wife, and well, maybe as much as I've had with her over a couple of months. We don't just sit and hang out in a way. I mean, we game together. I go in and torture her every now and then, but there's not a lot of real communication going on, of play, of anything. Well, our walks for shopping, those sometimes I chatter on, but often she's completely silent during them, which is very terrible for me. Yeah, and as to someone, outside that situation, this is the first time in a long time. I remember several months ago going down to the head shop to buy some lighter fluid in Flint's or something. And I ended up actually chatting with the shop girl because there's just nothing. I have no interaction. That's so anti-me, right? I mean, to be open to conversation with people is almost alien, but being essentially a hermit these last few years has really driven me into a more desperate stray. All right, let's set things up.